He had zero savings after a decade in the British Army, pawned his mom's car to fund his first property deal, and now he's buying million-pound portfolios from Thailand without even seeing the properties. Dan Kennedy spent 13 years as a combat medic in the British Army, deploying to Afghanistan 5 times before he was even old enough to rent a car. He left, taught himself how money actually works, and built a property empire from literally nothing. Today, he's buying deals worth over £1 million from his phone while sitting in Bangkok. Here's what got me. Dan broke money down into 2 types. Type 1 is money you trade your time for, and he says the money is not yours to spend, it's yours to invest. Type 2 is the money your money makes, and once Type 2 covers your lifestyle, you will never be able to outspend what you produce. That reframe alone is worth the entire conversation. We lit up a Monte Cristo, his personal favorite, and the conversation just went places I wasn't expecting. Dan doesn't do the whole polished interview thing, he's just telling you exactly how it happened, the ugly parts included, while ashing a cigar and not caring if it sounds pretty. In this episode, we cover everything from surviving rocket attacks in Afghanistan to the exact playbook he used to source 21 property deals in his first year with zero capital. If you've ever wondered how people actually build real wealth from nothing, this is the conversation. This is Breaking Cigars with Dan Kennedy.
All right.
Dan, great to have you on.
Thanks for having me.
You're looking dapper as hell, man. I'm feeling a little bit out of the suit zone, but that's okay.
I've got to represent England after all the shit that it gets.
It's true. It's a beautiful British style suit. For today, I have a few different cigars picked out for you, and one of them you actually picked out yourself. Starting with this one right here. It's a smaller one. It is called the the Umnum, which pays heritage to the Aztec ancestry and Central American cigar making. It's a blend of different cigars. I'll touch on the history in just a second. The second one is the notorious cigar by Conor McGregor. This one took about 2 years to make, 2 years to blend. And the interesting thing about cigars that are made by celebrities, they usually don't survive too long. But this one has been around, I think, for a few years now. And it's got some pretty decent reviews. Some people are mixed on it, but this one sells for about, I think, $14 in the US, but in Bangkok, it sells for 3 times more, which is very interesting. It's a blend of 4 different countries, tobacco from 4 different countries. So this is an interesting one. And then finally, you said, screw your choice, screw your cigars. So you chose out this beautiful Torpedo Monte Cristo. And Monte Cristo, I love personally. I believe Monte Cristo is Cuban, if I'm not mistaken. So would you like to try one of these first, or would you like to start with the Monte Cristo?
We'll start with the Monte Cristo.
Hell yeah. A great choice. Yeah, last time I've had Monte Cristo, I think was, it was a Dominican Monte Cristo out in Vegas with my dad, and that was the best cigar I've ever smoked.
Why? Why was it the best cigar? Because of the location or the company?
Both. It was us at Caesar's Palace. After an event, I was out at a workshop, Alex Hormozzi's workshop. There was about 40 of us. And after that, my family came in to visit, and we spent about 3 or 4 days together just being degenerates, having fun as a family. My dad really enjoys poker. And so every time he goes to Vegas, he usually comes back with a bunch of money. That particular time, though, I think we ended up losing more than gaining. But it was a hell of a night, and the cigar was great as well. I think I'll actually start with the Umnum here, the cigar I had on Monday before we had our event. And I'll go for the B cut. You went for the straight cut, or which one?
The B cut. I didn't really know which one I was selecting.
You have a preference on cuts and cigars? What's your taste?
Well, I'm very sentimental, so somebody bought me a cigar cutter that's engraved, and it's a straight cut. And since then, I try and use that at every opportunity. And because of the story behind it, I now like straight cuts.
Well, when did you have your first cigar?
At the 2022 at Cowdrey House, at an event of the same network that we are in.
And that was your first cigar. That's awesome. But I think I was asking you about the first time that you smoke a cigar, you mentioned it was at an event. Was it a memorable cigar?
It was a Cohiba.
Nice.
Yeah.
Do you have a preference for specific types of cigars? Is Davidoff your go-to?
Yeah, I like the aristocrat Davidoff or the Churchill Late Hour.
Brit supremacist.
Well, the Davidoff isn't a British brand, is it?
It is.
It is.
So, I would have to double check. Well, it was made by Zeno Davidoff, who spent time in Cuba and then created his own brand in Cuba. And then he was dissatisfied with the quality of the cigars. And so he burnt like $100,000 worth of cigars one day and completely cut his ties with Cuba and then started producing them in Dominican Republic. And I think Davidoff is rumored to be one of the brands that actually doesn't have a pass rate of cigars of more than 50%. Like, they make the cigars and the quality control is so high that half the cigars don't make it to market.
Right.
But I can't think of a Davidoff that I've had that I was not satisfied with.
That makes sense. I'm glad. Naturally, I've selected the Supreme Cigars as my favorite.
It is a Supreme cigar. I'm a big fan of Davidoff. But in my case, like, I haven't tried their Maduros. I'm a big fan of Oscar Valderas. So the wrapped up leaf cigar that you saw that really caught your attention, it's not just great marketing, but it's also a great cigar. The Corojo, people always scream at me. I mispronounce the Spanish names of things whenever I do the short form videos for cigar history. The Corojo cigar is okay, but I'm a big fan of the Maduro Oscar Valderas. But you yourself, you have a cigar lounge yourself that you own. How did you come to own a cigar lounge?
Well, it's mainly I am involved in property, and I love old buildings, Victorian buildings, Edwardian in Georgia. Very typical of the UK. We have lots of them. And I adore like the wood paneling, the drawing rooms, that whole sort of area. Like I say I was born in the wrong period, like nostalgically, when in reality I'd probably be in a coal mine dead at 30, as opposed to living with the aristocrats and the kings. I just like that whole style, and there was not really, I don't like drinking. And part of the network that we're in, there's a big cigar smoking culture, and it was going to be more of a coffee lounge. I thought, why not make it a cigar lounge as well? And it just fits right in. It fits in with the decor. It's dual role. So it's mainly my office, cafe area. We thought we'll bolt on a cigar lounge as well.
Man, that's the dream, honestly. In my future home, whichever property I'm going to own, a place I'm going to call home, a must-have is going to be a cigar lounge inside of it.
And it's really, like, I didn't set out to do this, but it's a fantastic networking tool to have your own lounge and to call it the lounge and invite people in and have meetings in the lounge and have a cigar. It is fantastic. I really was blown away by who got in contact and who wanted in, because it's such a rare thing to have a cigar lounge now. And it seems to be like the upper echelons of society, like businessmen who are all well-to-do, like 50 plus, typically. It's a big part of their culture, and it's really paid homage and done really well in terms of being able to raise investment, being able to bring vendors to the lounge and discuss deals in a nice environment where they can have coffee, they can have a cigar, they can chat, and it really leans into basically Britishness, which it's frowned upon now to be very happy with and proud of Britain. Whereas if you're out there stalwartly saying, I am British, this is me, and I love what was bequeathed to me by my ancestors, and I'm going to pay homage to it by replicating it. A lot of people like that.
Yeah, it's a great barrier to entry. It's a great way to network. And in your case, where did you first begin this journey of entrepreneurship? How did you get to the point of owning your properties and having this cigar lounge? Bring me all the way back to your youth.
Well, we didn't start at property. I was very, very fortunate, really bloody fortunate to always know what I wanted. I've never had any ambiguity of what I wanted. I had the wrong mind frame or mindset per se, but from the second or third word, it was like army. I'm going to join the army. For as long as I remember, I knew I was going to join the army. For like that, there isn't a memory where of my childhood where I didn't say, I am not going to join the army. It was, I'm going to join, I'm going to join, I'm going to join. So from like 5, 6, it was like, I'm joining the army, joining the army. The second I could join it, because in the UK, we have a very unique system where you can join as a child. You can join at 50, which, unless you're from a West African warlord country, it's not very typical of the Western world. So,
Well, Canadians have it copied. We're pretty much the exact.
oh, is it?
Yeah, like we can join the army at 16 as well.
Yeah. Or we can join at 15.
15?
Yeah, 15. Yeah. So you're still a child. You can't even buy cigarettes at that stage. And so the second that I could join, I petitioned my mother. I was like, let me join, let me join, let me join.
Was that at 16 or 15?
From like 11, 12, I was like, I'm joining the army, I'm joining the army.
But at which point did you actually join?
The day that I could, it's like 15 and like 8 months.
Wow.
And so I joined as soon as I could. Didn't even do my high school exams because it was before my high school exams. So I was like, I'm not going to need them anyway. We're in the military. And then since then, joined as a medic. And what I really noticed was I had a terrible relationship with money. It was awful. The problem with the military, and I was a bit of a dick when I was younger, as we all are, and I'm very thankful for that change in mindset that the military gave me. It also made me very comfortable because you get all your clothes paid for, you get all your food taken care of, your bills are taken care of. So the headline figure might only be like 800 quid or 900 quid as a 16-year-old, but it's all disposable. So realistically, to get that level of disposable income post-tax, you kind of need to be on double, triple that, because you need to pay your mortgage, you need to pay your rent, you need to pay the bills, but everything was completely paid for, so all that money was yours. And there's a big part of the culture called a pop stars weekend where you'd get paid, live like Freddie Mercury in a hedonistic weekend, and for the rest of the month you would fucking be broke. And that was my lifestyle with money. And I knew that property was a good thing to get into, but it was just typical average man, like, I'll do it tomorrow, I'll do it tomorrow, do it tomorrow. And then suddenly like 5 years passed and we're deep into Afghan tours, like earning 15 grand for 6 months, thinking I am the fucking baller because I've saved 15 grand after risking my life for just over minimum wage, thinking, yeah, I am the Don. That's how warped my relationship with money was. And what happened was they would give you a bit of a bonus if you'd learnt a language. So I was like, well, what the bloody hell? Which language am I going to get paid to learn the most? And it was either Arabic and Chinese. I was like, right, I'm a Chinaman. So then I spent about 3.5 grand on courses, going over to Shanghai, learning Chinese. And this is how bad my long-term planning was. I passed the HSK 3, which means you get the allowance. And the allowance was 30 quid a month. So it would have taken the equivalent of a full army career just to make back what I'd spent learning it. So
they didn't sponsor it. They didn't have like a way to, because there was no distance learning at the time.
No, they didn't. They gave you a Rosetta, which was online, but it just goes in one out there, in one ear, out the other. What you really need to do when you're learning a language is to go to a place where no one speaks anything but that language. So you're forced to immerse yourself into it. And then slowly but surely over like the weeks and days, you very, very quickly pick it up. Very quickly. And the interesting thing about Mandarin is once you've got the basics together, it's like singing a song. So you can have pretty in-depth conversations as long as it goes down a linear path.
I had a girlfriend that lived in Taiwan. She had a sponsored stay there, I think, for like a year or 2 years. And we were dating long distance. We're not even dating, we were just talking. We weren't even dating that fully. And I remember she was in tears every night from trying to learn language. And she's crazy intelligent, crazy read the speed, smarty pants. And she was struggling with it. And she was like, man, I don't even need this language. Why am I spending a year, 2 years learning this?
Yeah, I loved it. I found it really interesting. The military, you have so much free time because it's a hurry up and wait scenario. There's a lot of, you've got to seem to be busy, but there isn't much to do when you're in the UK. But then when you're on tour, you're absolutely flat out. You're like working 18 hours every day and there are no days off. In the UK, it's like, go do a litter sweep. Or go do a litter sweep. Let's go for a run. Let's do this. Unless you're on exercise. And so there was plenty of free time to just constantly practice and make use of that. the military really, really does invest in people that if you want to learn, they'll help you learn. If you want to improve, they'll help you improve. And there was a lot of people without any benefit to themselves. I wasn't a natural soldier. Everything that I do, I'm kind of really terrible at, and it takes a lot of effort just to get to like 0. It seems like I started like -3 in terms of a skill, language, or whatever. And so that I was very fortunate to have a few sort of mentors who I still am really thankful for, that would just put in work, because I would struggle with the most basic tasks, and very, very quickly you mold yourself into an individual where you become quite competent, and then you do the same for the soldiers coming through. And because I was so young and sort of like no life experience, I didn't take to soldiering like a duck to water, put it that way.
And so your specialization was combat medic, correct?
Yeah, I was a combat medic.
What pushed you in that direction as opposed to like infantry, something more?
I would love to say that there was a really like great reason, but I turned up, did the test, and the guy at the desk said, "Oh, you'd make a good medic." I was like, "Yeah, okay, I'll be a medic," and then that's why I became a medic. There was absolutely no divine intervention or anything like that. It was just pure chance. And I was very glad that I became a medic, because it allowed you to bounce from unit to unit to unit to unit to unit, and I got on a lot of tours. A tour is where you do a deployment or the equivalent. So I did Kuwait, I did Afghan 5 times. I did Optoral, did Sierra Leone, so did a lot. And I'll tell you a good story, a good dit, as we say in the military. My first patient, the day that I turned 18 is when I flew out to Afghanistan for Herrick 7 with 5 Medreg. And my first patient was in Fob Robinson, and because you're all wound up, everything's new, and eventually, very quickly, you become an uncaring medic, which means you provide better treatment because you're not as wide, it's not as exciting, it's just normal everyday stuff. So they said, "Medic, there's a bloody casualty at the front gate." So I was like, grabbed my bag and grabbed my arm, I run down to the front, thinking like there's been some sort of mine, there's been some sort of bomb. So I turn up and I'm like, you blown out of my ass, sweating everywhere, obviously not filling the patient full of confidence. And I just see a man like on a rug at the gate, and then they're like, "That's the patient." I was like, "Well, that doesn't seem like it's much of an emergency. He's up and he's talking, and he has a bandage on his leg." And the guard just says, "I need you to look at the leg." Now, for those of you who don't know, diabetes, it restricts peripheral circulation, so your body rots if you don't get a treatment, and in a place like Afghanistan there is no treatment for chronic diseases like this. So he had this bandage, and you know how you've got your foot here, you've got the mass of the foot. If it was covered in a bandage, it would look like a foot. And I remember unrolling the bandage and thinking, there isn't enough mass for a foot here. Like, what am I going to find here? And then as I peel it back, this last bandage, and this bandage hadn't been changed. It'd been on for a while. Like, loads of flesh came off, and then the smell hit me. And then his toes were like wrapped around his foot, and it rotted away. And I could see the bones, and they were black, and there were maggots on it, and the smell hit me. And then instantly I was like, all over the patient's foot, walking all over it, like, through the nostril, through the mouth. I was like, wow. The smell had grotesque, and I was not prepared for it, because I didn't expect it to be like a rotten stump. I had like a cursory thought, like, there's not enough mass for this foot.
Was that a soldier or was that a...
No, it was an Afghan local.
Okay, got it.
So we would be the only type of medical treatment. So very often people with chronic diseases would come to the bases and get treated.
Gotcha.
And typically we would only treat large limb and eye. If it was primary care, we wouldn't turn them away. Or if it was a traumatic injury, we would treat it. And so this person snuck through. So wow. When you vomit and it's unexpected, it was like through the nostrils, through the mouth, all over it. And the nurse there said, "Right, you've got to clean that up." So we cleaned it up and bandaged it, and then it was on its way. And that was the first patient that I'd ever dealt with, and it was a pretty massive one. And there were plenty of stories like that. And then during Herrick 7, you get more experience. Then I did Herrick 11, then 13, then 15, then Octoral.
What does that stand for, Herrick?
Herrick is the British version of the operation. So when we do a deployment, they're called something like Op Herrick or Op Telic or whatever the case may be.
And that's the year?
It's called Herrick 7. So Herrick 2, Herrick 3, Herrick 4, Herrick 5, Herrick
Gotcha.
Vegetarian.
And they did it in cycles of 4 months or 6 months?
6 months. But typically there'd be a bit of a... One would come, and there'd be a bit of a crossover. And during that also, that week, there was a doctor there. And there was also another medic. And the med center was a demountable. Do you know what that is? It's basically just like a tin shed.
Yep.
Or like an ISO container. And there are 2 ISO containers together. And then there's loads of like earth around it because earth is a very good protector.
Mm-hmm.
And we had this doctor and he was suffering. Like he'd been there for 6 months. Some people react to it very differently. But for me, I'm quite fortunate. It does not bother me at all what I saw or what I treated. I sleep like an absolute baby. But his nerves were frayed. There's a lot of responsibility on the officers and the captains. Now, when somebody fires or the Taliban fires a rocket, it's usually completely blind. It's a bastardized cannon. They don't really have the sophisticated targeting systems that the modern weapons have. So they just fire and hope, a hit and hope. And so very often they miss. So you're constantly being IDF'd. Constantly the alarms go off and you have to take cover. Now, after a while, obviously nerves frayed. So our first experience of this, we sometimes don't know where they're firing from. So they call in fast air. Fast air is where they they fly a fighter jet really, really low. And when it passes the sound barrier, it just goes bum, 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 and it's meant to intimidate the people who are firing rockets into the base, but we don't actually know where they are. Later on, technology became very, very good, and they could automatically, when somebody fired, one would return fire automatically and they'd pinpoint where it came from. But in the beginning, we didn't have that technology. So fast air gets called in, and we don't know what fast air is. It's the first time we've ever heard it. First time we've ever felt it as well. And if you've ever been close to a jet, you know they're loud on the ground. So when they're in the air, they're even louder. So the alarm goes off, and the doctor goes, "Oh God, get your body armor on, take cover." And so we get our body armor on, and then fast air get called, and we think at this point that we're hearing the missile coming in, we're hearing the IDS. So the alarm goes off, and we're like, "Oh, we're hearing the missile, but it's going to miss us," because we had many lessons about it. But then we just hear, and it just gets louder, and it gets louder, and it gets louder. And then the doctor stands up in the middle of the room and goes, "Well, we're going to die." And then at which point, me and the other medic were like, the stuff starts shaking, the medicine starts falling off the edge of the shelves, and it just gets louder and louder, and it goes, that breaks through the sound barrier as this jet flies across us. And at this stage, the other medic, because I was 18 here, only a few weeks ago I'd turned 18, and it's very indicative of how much of a good guy this other medic was, because he opened the fridge, ripped out all the shells with all the cold storage drugs in, shoved me in the fridge, closed the fridge, thinking, right, I'll have a bit more cover than him. And then so I was in this fridge, completely pitch black, after the doctor just went, "We're going to die." And then I hear the bangs and I think, fuck, we've just been hit. And then as quick as it got loud, it got really quiet. And there was about 40 seconds where I was just stood in this fridge and then I opened it, and the doc's just stood in the middle of the room going. And then the other medic is under a canvas stretcher, which wouldn't have done anything. And he's like, "What just happened there?" And we just destroyed thousands of pounds of drugs because he'd ripped them all out of the fridge. But we didn't get in trouble for that because of the reason for it. And that was sort of my first experience. That was within 2-3 days of arriving there.
So what did the doctor think it was? Because it sounded like it was quite a bit of time gap between the actual whatever was going at you. It wasn't a rocket, because no way he would have been able to.
No, it wasn't. It was the jet just flying over the base, and it breaking the sound barrier in his nerves, were just frayed.
And so how long did that last? That lasted about 30 seconds, where you guys were feeling it?
No, it felt like minutes, but
wow,
it wasn't minutes. It was probably 10-15 seconds.
Wow.
Yeah. From the alarm from when the jet went off.
And you guys couldn't tell that that was an actual jet. It was just,
We'd never heard it before,
okay, gotcha.
but it was
Gotcha.
like after it happened the third time, we didn't even put a body armor on. It was like fingers in the air and all. So yeah, you get very blasé because of how often it happens, and it starts to not be scary.
And so which years was it that you actually spent in Afghanistan?
2007 was Herrick 7, I believe. And then I did Herrick 11, Herrick 13, Herrick 15, and Optoral. I can't remember which one. Optoral was when you went to Kuwait. Sorry, not Kuwait. My goodness. The capital of Afghanistan. I can't bloody remember what it's called now. See, this is how much of an effect it had on me, the army. Kabul, yeah. I was with the Americans then and Canadians.
And so that was how many years in the army total?
I did 13.
13.
Yeah, so a good innings. But the side effect of learning Chinese is that I went out and I started to have Chinese friends. Now, in the UK, the Chinese diaspora are all like the rich Chinese families sending their kids to be educated. And the conversations that they would have would be very different. Where the working class British man is like beer, girls, and fighting. Like that's all we typically would do, and training occasionally. So the level of conversations were different, and they would plan in lifetimes as opposed to like years. They'd be doing things now to try and benefit kids that they didn't have. And that whole sort of thought process, I was like, bloody hell, what, why? Like, no one did that for me. Like, what, why are you thinking like that? And almost all of them wanted to get out of China, like every single one, because they'd already made their wealth. It could be taken away by the authoritarian government. And especially Hong Kongers were trying to get out as well. And my first business partner's a Hong Konger.
What was it like doing business with Hong Kong?
Yeah, it was fine. He was all right. He was pretty ruthless, but it's good to be on my side, I suppose.
And so 13 years in the army, like, at which point did you say, you know what, enough's enough. I'm not going to do another 12 years or 7 years or however long it is to your retirement.
It's a very clear moment where I was with the Gurkhas and they was doing an operation in Musakala. Now, I was fiercely patriotic. Like, my earliest memory of my grandfather was like him with his hand around my neck, grabbing the dirt, going, "You're from this land, never forget it."
I love it.
Yeah, and I sort of embody that just because of those around me. And I thought the best way to be so thankful, to show homage to everyone who came before me and who created Britain, is to join the army. And that's why I wanted to join it. I was always so happy that I was in the UK, and I still am today when I travel around the earth. It just makes me feel so appreciative. And I think there was a very clear moment where we were at the edge of the city, and I was just watching the city be bombed, and then I had the thought in my head, I was like, oh, we're doing really good work here. And then I was like, hold on, I'm in somebody else's land. We're bombing their cities. Am I the good guy? And then I was like, we're actually the bad guys in this situation. And it was that clear, and that I sort of immediately became unplugged. And from that point on, I was really dissatisfied.
Wow.
With the army. It was just one clear moment. And then I thought, like, well, how do I get rich? I need to replace my income. And then I learned about the fiat system and how money just gets willed into existence as debt against assets. And then the interest on that debt is what the banks use to make profit, but yet they just create it out of nothing using the fractional reserve banking. So then I was like, money isn't real. And I'm risking my life for not even that much of it. So then I became angry that I was not getting paid enough for the risk I was taking. And then I became bitterly angry that money wasn't real, and I still didn't fucking have any. And then I became really motivated to learn. And what happens with money is all it is reputation. It's the trust of the bank saying that this money exists that allows you to then go and buy it. And then I thought, right, if I became as trustworthy as the bank, then my word would have the same credibility as a bank's. And then that's kind of how I got into property. I know that's a bit woo-woo, but you can will money into existence. If you say, I'm going to pay this much, and you keep your word, it's as good as there. And then you can use that word to then go purchase property. And this is kind of like a long journey as I learned more and more and more and became more and more competent. about how property works, how money works, is the destination we arrive at.
And all money is trust and perception.
Correct.
And because you believe that this is worth X amount.
Yeah, that's a great way to articulate it. So then I went around and I searched for people who did property. I searched for people who would teach, and I just absorbed everything. And I got many snippets from a lot of people.
And this is which year that you left Army?
I started property when I was 26, and I left the Army when I was, I think, 29, 28. Yeah, because I joined when I was just turning 16 and 13 years. So it was like 29, 28. And at that point, I'd been in property for 4 or 5 years, and I managed to replace my income. And all I did, I had no money and no experience and no credibility. So I had to start at the bottom. And that is almost always a strategy called sourcing, where you would go find a deal. The property might be worth 60,000. You would negotiate 40,000. And then you would sell that contract. You'd sell that to somebody for, say, 3.5K, 4K. Here's your money to the vendor, but it's not your money. Here's your property to the buyer, but it's not your property. And then you take that split. So you could ask, why would the vendor sell to you as an individual if you've got no money? Because there can be a plethora of reasons. Maybe it's privacy. Maybe they're happy with the price that you offer them. There's a whole sort of subsector of the market called motivated sellers, where they want to sell quickly, or they want to have a guaranteed sale, because many properties fall through, and you're able to give that reassurance to the seller that this will complete. And that in itself has value, because a lot of properties fall through. So I would source a deal in Hartlepool. It was my chosen area because it was low value. Some other gentleman would buy it, or some other lady would buy it, and then I would take a little bit of a split. Now, in the first year, I did 21 deals, and that's where I sourced 21 deals. And I managed to get about 50 grand together, and that enabled me to purchase my first deal. But that whole journey from the first deal to the 21st, it was just a plethora of mistakes, and I was able to learn those mistakes and take it into the next property. So I'll tell you the story about the first deal that I sourced. So I went up in a suit thinking, right, they're going to want to deal with somebody professional, 26-year-old in an ill-fitting suit, the only suit that I owned, obviously, at that point. Knocked on the door, I said, hi, I'd like to buy a house. And the typical reaction would be, get away, this is weird. Now, that happened so many times, I was like, okay.
You went door to door looking for...
Yeah, not door knocking, yeah. Because I didn't have any money to do marketing, because I'd spent it all on education. And then during that education, I've learned that your credit file was really, really important. And then I bought some of the education, a little bit of it on credit card, but some of it from savings. And the first payment of the credit card was before I got paid at the end of the month. So I was like, shit, I just learned about credit file. I'm going to get a late payment in my first month of borrowing money. Because even after I joined when I was 15, I started when I was about 25, 26. So even after a decade in the Army, I had absolutely zero to show for it, because as soon as the money came in, it got spent. And that was my relationship with money. So I had no soft place to land. Went up to Hartlepool, and we knocked on doors. Had so many negative reactions. So I was like, right, I am the problem here. There's something that I'm doing to elicit this reaction. So let me dress down, and let me try and offer a service first to catch a wider net. So first of all, I tried, as being a builder. I wasn't a builder at this point. So I knocked on the door. I said, hi, my name's Daniel. I'm a local builder. I'm looking for properties, for jobs. If you need any work doing, let me know, and I'll be happy to quote. And what I did is I handed them a piece of paper with my number, and it had big black felt tip, £500 written on the back of it. And it was a bit of a show. And then I'd hand it to them, and then I'd make it clear that they could see me looking at the £500, and I'd be like, oh yeah, as we're builders, we also buy houses. So any person that you put me in touch with, if I buy them, I'll give you £500. So what I wanted to do, instead of pitching to that one person, I wanted to pitch to that one person, that everyone that they knew. And very, very quickly, it went from, get out my door, bugger off, to, oh, do you want to come in for a brew? Do you want to, this person's selling, that person's selling. And the reception was so much better. And this was in the space of a weekend. So I did the education over Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then had a week off, went straight up to Hartlepool, and this is when I immediately started knocking on the doors. Now, after, I can't think how many, but it was a bloody lot. I said to myself, like, let's do 100 doors, naively, because that's a nice round number. But just walking down somebody's garden, knocking on the door, pitching, walking back, it takes bloody ages when you have that number. And so I was just doing it from morning till evening, morning till evening, morning till evening. And then on the Wednesday, knocked on the door. His name's Bob, 1 Striker Street it was. And the owner said, I am interested in selling, but I don't like speaking to people who I don't know, so let me call somebody. So he called his friend Bob. Bob comes over. We explain the story. And he goes, yeah, he'd love to sell. Let's take a look around the property. So it was a typical UK terrace, which is 2 up, 2 down, where there's a front room, there's a back room, and there's stairs that go up to the next floor, and then another room and another room. Now, every property on this bloody street sold for like 40, 41, 44, 40, in and around that range. So I knew the end value, GDV, would have been around 43 to 44, best case. Now, I've got no money at this stage, and I've got no credibility. I've got no connections. All I've got is the education. So I know it's going to be worth this much. And I asked Bob, like, how much do you want for it? So here's a key tool whenever you're negotiating, is never be the first to name the figure, because often what they're happy with could be a price that you're able to pay. Now, immediately I thought, brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Asked him how much he wanted for it, and he said £26,000. Now, I know the end value of this is going to be 40, 44, but it needs work. It needs a new kitchen, needs a new bathroom, and then through no experience, I just pulled this figure out of my arse. I was like, it's probably going to cost about 10 grand to do. So would be all in for around 36 grand, and it'd be worth 44, which is a good percentage in terms of below market. Now, didn't know anybody who I could sell this to, didn't know anybody who I could raise the money to sell this to, so I just went on Facebook and I posted the deal. Now, there was a gentleman in Sweden in one of the Facebook groups who said, I'd be interested in this. I buy cash in this area, and I know the street very well. Can I bring someone round, or can I get do you have a RIC survey? Now, a RIC survey is a Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors. Now, you can borrow credibility from professional bodies, and this was a great way to be like, hey, this is how much it's going to be worth. This is how much you've secured it for. And they're both third parties, because you've got a third party contract with the vendor saying 26,000, and you've got a third party contract from a RIC surveyor saying 44,000. Now, to get this RIC survey, you needed 500 quid, but I didn't have 500 quid. But what I did have is my mum's car. So I was able to pawn my mum's car temporarily from cash converters to pay for the RIC survey. But then I also needed a place to stay. So I asked Bob if I could stay in the place that I was trying to sell. And at which point, like, all the veneer of professionalism was gone. And I just basically explained what I was doing, what I wanted to do, complete honesty. And he was like, yeah, I actually love the story. So the RIC survey comes round. They do the survey. I'm waiting in the kitchen speaking to Bob. Then he goes away. It takes a few days. So then I'm hanging around. I've got no car to go back home. So I'm having to hang around and sleep in this house for a few days till the RIC survey comes in. The RIC survey comes in, and the GDV, 60 grand. For after the work is done, it's 60 grand. And I was like, what the hell? And that's no property has sold for 60 grand on this street ever. Why would he make that suggestion? There's something must be wrong. So when you look at the street, and if you go at Hartlepool, Striker Street, you'll see all the terraced houses. And then the last one just goes up a little bit, but it still looks like a 2-story house. But then I went upstairs, opened one of the cupboards, and there was stairs to a 3rd floor, and it was actually a 4-bed instead of a 2-bed. So that's why it had the increased value. And so I stayed in this house for maybe 4 or 5 days now, because we got it on the Monday, and I started sleeping in the house on the Wednesday. And I didn't see that there was a whole entire story of the property that I was selling in this house. So Sven immediately was like, this is brilliant news. This is fantastic. And I was thinking, I need to pull this deal and sell it to somebody else because I could get more from it, because I only sold it to him for £3,500. And I was like, fuck, I can make way more for this. But then I thought, you know what? It's easy money. It means I make my payment. It means I get the car out of pawn. Because he was willing to give me $1,750 up front and then the other $1,750 when we complete on the purchase. So he gave me $1,750. I got the car out of pawn. I paid the Rick surveyor back. I was basically back in the back, paid the credit card payment. Now I had about £850 left, and I kept thinking, like, the devil on my shoulder and the angel on the shoulder. The devil was saying, just keep it, that's yours, you need it, money's tight. But then the angel was like, listen, if you'd have spoke to Bob first and he'd have brought you this deal, you'd have given him the £500. Now, Bob really, really helped for the sale because the owner was sort of, wouldn't speak to me, didn't do anything, wouldn't sign and he explained all the contracts to him. He explained how it all works. He explained that this is actually an okay deal if you're happy with the price. And so he was very, very key to this deal. So I was like, you know what, let me go meet him. Met Bob. And he hadn't heard me knock on the door and say, I'll give you £500. So he wouldn't have minded if I didn't pay it him. So I had a bit of a moral conundrum. Went and met him, gave him the £500. And unbeknownst to me, he was a member of the local Masons Lodge in Hartlepool. So a very well-connected person. And I just gave him £500 and said, any other properties that you come across, if they want to sell and I purchase them, I'll give you £500. And then as I'm driving back from London to Hartlepool, which is an 8-hour journey, he calls me up and he goes, I've got 3 more people that want to sell. Charles.
Wow.
And not all 3 were deals, only 2 of them. But then as the second, like Sven in Sweden, who I hadn't met, got a whiff of that there were 2 more deals, he was like, I'll take both of them from you because of how good the first one was. And he paid the fees up front to secure both of them.
Yeah.
So I charged $3.5K. And within the first week, I'd paid back my course fee for the education just by not being a snake and screwing somebody over. And then that's an enduring theme. There's been many situations where I'm like, I could keep this money and no one would know, but I would be better off. But I would know and God would know. And that there's a tax when you're a dishonest person that comes to fruition in the worst ways possible. But there's also a benefit when you do the right thing in ways that aren't connected. And it's very difficult to explain, but it's my lived experience. Like when you do good, good happens to you. When you're an honest person, people want to work with you. When you're a snake, snaky things happen to you. Like you get what you put out into the universe.
And a lot of it is the energy that you draw towards yourself and the energy that you put out into the universe. That's 100% true, and I 100% agree.
Yeah.
What made you choose property investments in the first place?
Just because I knew vaguely that property was a good thing. I had the real world didn't exist at that point, but I just kind of knew that property was a good idea. And so I just sort of committed to it, very similar to the military. Once I've got it in my head, it's happening. And here we are.
And how do you feel about that choice in retrospect? Would you?
So good. It's almost so. I'm very happy with the journey that I've gone because where I am today is fantastic. However, I do wish I because I wish I learned it sooner, but who knows, maybe I wouldn't be the same person. I have a bit of a hobby where I like to go around aristocratic houses because I love the story that most of the aristocrats that we have are descendants from the Normans that came over in 1066. Like we are nearly like those men that came over and defeated Harold and in William the Conqueror's army. There's nearly 1,000 years of lineage of them being on top. And I don't know about you, that's so physically arousing. I have to learn more about their stories. So I'd often go to these aristocratic houses, and Lord Longley was one of them. And he was very eccentric. He's passed now. And I asked him on a tour of his house, like, how come you're rich and other people aren't? So this is kind of a bit of the journey of me learning how money works. And that your relationship with money is way more important than your actual amount that you earn. It's infinitely more. Because if you're earning $1 million, but you're spending $1 million and one, you're going bankrupt. So he has a room in his manor, in his country manor, of every person since 1066 that came over. It is baller. It is baller. And I asked him, why are you still rich and other families aren't? Because a lot of them have dropped off. And he goes, in this family, We have had gambling addicts, we've had womanizers, we've had entrepreneurs, we've had industrialists, we've had accountants, we've had bankers, we've had soldiers, we've had officers, we've had generals. But we've never had a bad person followed by a bad person. Just by pure fluke, we've had and he would like point to the painted, we've had a general, followed by a womanizer, followed by an accountant, followed by followed by an industrialist, or so on and so forth. And then I said, well, what about you? He's like, what one are you? And he goes, put it this way, my son has a lot of fucking work to do. Obviously implying that he's one of the bad guys and his son needs to be one of the good guys.
Gotcha. Man, I love that story. And so going from real estate, is that something that you're heavily involved with like now, or have you more so exited that space?
No, I will always be involved in real estate. So the idea is to acquire the assets and then never sell and keep the cash flow. So the whole premise of my business is to get paid when I buy, get paid when I build, get paid when I let, and then let inflation do the main sort of wealth producing. Like, you want to have inflation as somebody that's sitting on your board, because if you've got debt, which is money that's just been willed into existence, inflation is the tool that the government use to tax the future people for the benefit of the now. So what happens is prices don't really go up, money loses its value. So prices don't go up, money loses its value because they print more money, so there's more supply, but there's not enough goods and services, so the value of money goes down. So if you have debt, what happens over the long period of time is that debt loses its value. It still might be 750k, but it's been eroded to the point where it's half in terms of goods and services. So that sometimes means the house has increased by half. So then you've got your 100k house, you've got 75k worth of debt. 20 years happens, maybe the house is worth 200k, but you've still got the 75k debt. So now you've got that 125k equity. Like, you can take out another loan to borrow that to go buy more. And like, that's the sort of like engine that I'm using to build wealth. And so the longer you own property, the better it gets. So I'll never sell.
Do you feel it is practical for, let's say, people my age, in their 20s, to get into real estate, or has the game gone increasingly more difficult over the past 10 years?
So what's happening is the legislation is making it harder and harder to get involved in property. There's so many do-gooders all around the economy. There'll be like somebody that's forcing building regs to be more onerous, somebody that's forcing planning rules to be more onerous. Now, there's never any talking between these people, but all these rules make it more and more difficult to build new supply. So prices go up. There's a real sort of pressure on the housing stock in terms of the people coming in versus the houses being built. So as long as you can get the property using none of your own money, it's a good thing, because over the long term, you're going to have that benefit of inflation inflating the debt away. Now, the issue is, to get access to the type of lending that you need to do that first vanilla deal where you're going to have to put cash in. And getting that cash for that first vanilla deal is quite hard. It can be done. But then it's like a snowball at the top of the mountain. Like, now it's almost like vomit worthy how easy it is to make a couple 100k. Like, we're over here in Bangkok. We've purchased 2 deals that I haven't seen while we've been here since December. One of them is valued at 1.2. We bought it for 781. So a nice easy 400k in equity there. The other one is valued at, we bought it at auction for 970 and it's valued at 1.3. And I've done nothing to them. All I've done is paper exercises of making sure that the tenants are now compliant. Some fire alarms are sorted. Very, very minimal things. So we've essentially got all our money out of both of them. And I haven't even seen them. Where previously, that first deal, I was up there knocking on the door, negotiating, trying to do schedule of works for Sven and the investor, and I only made 3.5k.
Is it very different purchasing properties here versus purchasing properties in the UK?
Yeah, absolutely. So the UK has English common law, where contractual agreements are abided by. It's very, 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 very understated how important that is for wealth generation, because you can tie people into contracts, then they have to do those contracts. Whereas in other parts of the world, if you're powerful, you don't have to follow through on those contracts. So it makes it very difficult, and it'd be a very tenuous place to build wealth. Hence the Chinese people trying to get out. But if you piss off the wrong person, take it like, look at Jack Ma and his business gone overnight because he said, oh, I don't really like regulation. And he was the richest man in China, right?
Where did he end up going? I remember seeing some news around it where he just disappeared.
Disappeared, hasn't he?
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, I think property is flipping fantastic and I love it. And it's really, really, really easy to get ahead once you've got that base. Now, going from 0 to 100,000 is disgustingly hard. It is the hardest I've ever bloody worked. But once you get that 100,000, the 200,000 is inevitable. And it's the same with a million. The first million is flipping hard. But then once you get the first million, the second is inevitable. And you can build sort of like where, because you've got a good relationship with money, and I'll explain the relationship with money now shortly because it's a very good lesson. You'll go like this, you'll go like this, you'll go like this, and then your fucking portfolio just goes, thank God. And you can never spend more than what you produce. You've got the right sort of fundamentals in place. Now, the rules for money and ensuring you never go broke after this. You have two types of money, type 1 and type 2. Type 1 is money you exchange your time for. Now, time is a very finite resource. You cannot get it back once you spend it. So when you exchange your time for money, that money is not yours to spend. It's yours to invest. So that you shouldn't be buying any luxuries if you are living off your time. So let's say you need to buy some groceries or some shopping. You earn £1,000 a month. Your living standards are £800 and you've got that £200 left. That £200 needs to be invested to make more money. Now, in the beginning, you're probably going to make negligible amounts. It's going to take years for you to have any meaningful impact on your lifestyle by doing this. But let's say you get 1,000, you're putting £200 a month away. £200, £200, £200. First year, you put around 2,400 and you make 10% in a FTSE fund or crypto or whatever. So you're only making 240 quid if we were to say, if you put it in at the start of the year. That isn't going to change your life. But you do that over and over and over again. Now suddenly you've got a deposit for a house. So just keeping it nice and basic, you buy that house, you get a deposit. Now it's making £500 a month. But your living expenses are still the same, they're still £800. But now you've got 1,500 to work with. So now you're putting away £700. So that second deposit is quicker. Now suddenly you're making another £500. So what happened now? Your living expenses are £800, but you've got £1,000 coming in from the money that your money work generates. And that's the second type. So type 1 is money you exchange your time for. Type 2 is the money that your money makes. Now, once you reach that critical mass, and it's going to take you years, where the money that your money makes pays for your lifestyle, if you never allow your lifestyle to inflate above that figure, you're always going to get richer. Because living expenses £800, you're still working in a job, you're earning £1,000, and you're also earning £1,000 from your investment. So that you're earning £2,000, that's £1,200 that you can invest each month. Or maybe you can have a little bit of lifestyle inflation and now you can spend £1,000 a month or whatever. But we'll keep the numbers nice and round. So what happens is you're investing more and more and more. And each month, your income goes up, your income goes up, your income goes up, your income goes up. And it'll be slow at first. It'll be slow at first to the point where it will shoot up. And you will never be able to catch it up if you've built those rules where you don't waste money.
How does the saying go? The compounding interest is the
wonder of the world, yeah. And it really is true. The problem is a lot of people spend profits before they ever get them. Now, this is very typical of builders. They will get a chunk for a job, see all that money, spend it, and then realize, bugger, I've lost all this. And they then have to go down to do deceitful things to try and save those jobs. It's been my experience. So that's why we brought construction in-house, where I take up the risk. I pay for the materials, I pay for the lads' wages. And that's just like another element to de-risk property. But yeah, that rule, the relationship with money is way more important. There'll be people who are all earning £2,000 a month, that will be richer than people earning £10,000 a month because of the way that they live their lifestyles. And so there's no point in trying to learn how to make £1 million a year or £2 million a year if you don't get that relationship with money correct.
The in and out proportions. For me, I found it more challenging to figure out how to invest money than to actually make it. Quite frequently, I just find that the money is sitting, and I will have the problem of overspending. I come from a background of immigrants and a lot of scarcity mindset and always putting away for the winter. That's how I was raised. And so I've never been in a situation of having to live out of my car or really, 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 really cut down on expenses, because my relationship with money has always been never spend more than what you earn, unless it's some sort of an investment, like let's say a car that's supposed to make your life more efficient, or a home. And so I find myself in a very interesting position where it's, I've been staying away from real estate and the topic of crypto and investments. I've only ever put away money. And for example, in Canada, we have something called the tax-free savings account put in by, God bless him, Stephen Harper.
Perfect.
And you just put it aside on stocks, whichever one you want within the TSX, the Toronto Stock Exchange. And it's really the only thing that's a silver lining in being a Canadian nowadays. That ability to put away, I think, up to 80,000 CAD, which might be like 40,000 quid. I'm not sure, or less, and generate dividends on that. Which there's something called the drip portfolio,
Right.
and then it just cycles back into the stocks. And the funny thing is, I look at that money that I have put away there, and it's like, I'm never going to touch that money, because the moment you touch that money, that's part of your TFSA. You can't pull that money out, because the moment you pull it out, there are like several detriments.
You can lend against it, though. You can lend against the value. There'll be somebody that will give you a loan against that.
Interesting.
Almost definitely.
Like as in take credit against it. Yep, that's a great point. And so even if I wanted to get debt, like there's a lot of guys I know that are experts in getting you a loan if needed. I'm in a position where, being in the startup space, in the tech space, it's like ideally I would launch my own startup that would need a whole bunch of investment, and I completely bootstrap and use that money on my own startup. But other than that, I really have no clue where to put that money aside, other than just stocks within TFSA. That's been my problem. And I've stayed away from real estate because to me it's been very scary because of all the regulation and seeing all the issues in Toronto around being a landlord. Like my parents, they have a home, and they've always talked about, hey, let's maybe like rent out the basement to generate some extra revenue, kind of retire my mom a little bit, which in all honesty, she doesn't need retirement because then she'll have nothing to do. She'll go crazy. But that aside, it's scary being a landlord because then you can't get rid of those people for quite some time. And so just hearing all these very intimidating stories around owning property, that's kind of pushed me away from property ownership.
And then don't own it. You can flip it. You can do all sorts. There's so many ways to make money. And one thing that I would advise anyone, like if you have the ability and you have capital to deploy, like invest in yourself as opposed to invest in other people. Because if you say property is scary, what that really means is you just don't know enough about the industry that it generates. For me, the regulation, I'm happy it's coming in because it's like pulling up the ladder. There's less competition.
Higher barriers to entry.
In some cases, I'm the only person bidding on portfolios. Like the only person. So I know it's just a matter of time that before I get it. Where previously in the early days, I'd see the people in my city that we would all be going for the same deal. So then the vendor would get a better deal. But now there aren't, these people aren't buying it as frequently anymore. Like the norm for human society is a really sort of like sliver of elite, and then everyone else is poor. And after World War II, that was like upended for a short period of time. But we are, especially with inflation, with the way the banking system works, is we're going back to that. We're going back to like a really rich elite because everyone's wealth is being inflated away. because of all like the promises of money and like promises of pensions, promises of all this government services. And the only way that they can pay it for it is by printing the money, which means everyone's savings, everyone's assets are getting inflated away. Now, the people who have the assets where they're going up, what are they going to do with that money? They're going to put it in more assets, so they're just going to get hoovered up by the same people to the point where there's a few people that own all the assets. And so you can participate in the market, or your descendants are going to end up being on the bottom rung of society. Those are the two choices. So you can fear it and then just really set everyone else up after you for failure, or you can put in the work today to make sure that you are on the top rung. So that's the view that I take. And so many people are not even in the game trying. So if you try, you're already beating 90% of the people there. And all you need to do is just a little bit of improvement every day, a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of tool, another way to make money, another way to extract a few points out of a property, and suddenly you're in the top 1%. And what's interesting about the top 1% or the top earners is they're so abundant with their knowledge sharing. It's not like a scarce mindset where everyone's like, oh, this is my knowledge, this is what I'm doing. They're usually the hardest working people, the nicest people, that really want to see people succeed. But the whole economy is skewed in a way where it's only those people, few people at the top will actually get the benefit from it. But that's just like sort of late stage capitalism. It's happened many times before, and it will happen many times again until it all collapses and something else happens.
What drew you specifically to Thailand and investing in Thailand as opposed to any other country in the world, for example, where a lot of people at your level are, let's say, go to Dubai?
So I had a very pessimistic view of the West. Like I would speak to people for a long, long time. I'd walk around the world and it'd be like there's a meteor coming towards the planet and no one's looking up and seeing it. Like I'm seeing like the degradation of like the family unit, more people having children and setting those children up for failures, more people indulging in hedonism, more people not planning and trying to make a better tomorrow. And I'd speak to people and they wouldn't even care that they could affect their life. They'd just sit in their misery. Like if you walk around the world today, just everywhere, most people are so bitterly negative and so unhappy and doing nothing to change their circumstances. They're letting the circumstances dictate their life as opposed to dictating the circumstances, and you can. And so I was like, my God, there's no hope for these people. That's going to crumble. Like we are absolutely fucked. So what I wanted to do was build businesses in multiple places, just in case this one broke before that one. And so Thailand was one where I've just sort of like dipped my toe in. So the whole Dubai, come to Dubai. Again, I like incompetent democracies as opposed to autocracies, because autocracies are bloody great when you've got somebody who's competent, but awful when you haven't. And so you want your leaders to not have power and to be sort of hamstrung, so it takes a long time for things to go through, so you can sort of plan and adjust if you need to exit. Well, let's say use Dubai for an example. The leader now is fantastic, but what if the next one's a moron because he's grown up and he's soft? And all he's been doing is fucking indulging in Dubai chocolates. Like that's entirely possible, and he's completely incompetent.
Nations rise and fall, and leaders change.
Exactly. Where democracy, it's a lot slower, so you can sort of plan your exit per se. So that's why I'm kind of targeting them more than Dubai.
Interesting. So you have an outlook with a much longer time horizon, as opposed to, hey, it's great right now in Dubai, let's go Dubai.
It's a 1,000-year thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's what excites me. And all it takes is one motherfucker in your ancestors or your family to set up the rest for success if you structure it in a way. And you can be that person. You can set up everyone after you for success. Like everyone after me is going to be rich, whether they like it or not, because of how the property business is structured. They're not going to be able to sell it. They're not going to be able to dispose of the assets. It's going to be turned into a REIT that's managed by competent people who they're going to have shares in. And I remember a story when I used to tell this back when I was like 26, 27, that I'm going to make sure that children that I don't have are going to have houses now. And the response from most people, well, no one did that for me. yeah, that's fine. But you can do it for the next one, so why wouldn't you? And there just seems to be a general lack of thankfulness from their ancestors. Like if you go back, and I'm sure yours is the same, even like 4, 5, 6, 7 generations, your ancestor was probably a peasant or some fucking coal miner or some tin miner that died at 25 of lead poisoning and just suffered their whole life just to be able to get that next generation so the bloodline continued. And that was all human existence. All human existence was like
A lot of suffering.
Wait, just get a child out. And then half of them would die. Most of them would die. Oh, this one survived. And then now things have got so comfortable. People have got so entitled and forgot that they are the product of thousands of people suffering just to survive, to give them the opportunity to then go and build the life that they want. Like if, like, as you know, like Tate says all the time, like if you met your ancestors, would they be proud of you? Would they be proud of what you're doing? And that burns me, that like really, really burns, like that thought. I'm so thankful. Like my granddad was a coal miner and like didn't really finish school. Was a coal miner all his life, had a stroke at like 55, so retired early. And that suffering that I saw and knew of is enough to motivate me, and other people won't let themselves get motivated by that. There's no thankfulness for it.
Drawing from that energy, drawing from your ancestors and having gratitude, and even just walking around these cities. And Bangkok is massive. I think the greater Bangkok area is like 17 million people. And looking at the infrastructure, it's like, man, it's these people, the past 1, 2, 3 generations have built this massive city that we now get to partake in. Someone suffered for us to have all this infrastructure.
Yeah.
That was not there even 30 years ago.
Like go to Lumpini Park. There's going to be men who are sleeping and that's their home. They just sleep there and then they work. And then tell me you have a hard life. You don't have a hard life. You're a Westerner. Every Westerner who isn't rich, the person whose fault that is the person in the mirror. Like it's so easy to change your life. And it might take 20 years. It might take 10 years. Property is very slow, but it will happen. Those 10 years are going to pass anyway. So why the fuck not have a better outcome at those 10 years by taking steps today? Now, for me, I see my ages as different people. I am living in the summer of the business because of the Daniel of 5 years ago took the right action. Now, I'm going to make sure that Daniel in 5 years is going to have an even bloody better life. Like, we're different people, and we owe those future selves, and we have to pay homage to our past selves constantly. And I just, that sort of mind frame sets you apart from a lot of people. So there isn't many people who would even be willing to entertain a conversation about that. Or they will, and they'll be, yeah, that's good. But then they sleep in the next day. Their actions don't follow through from their words. So it makes you a very difficult person to be around because you're going to expect that from yourself. You expect it from others. And a lot of the people, I want a better outcome for them than they want for themselves, and I can't fathom it. Like, there's a few things that I say to myself that keep me motivated because, like, there's so many distractions. There's gambling, there's porn, there's indulging in food. There's just a plethora of things vying for your attention. But I always think, why not give your future self your attention? Like, it's the best investment that you could ever make as an individual. So there's a few things that I like to say. And it might sound pretty harsh, but it's really, 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 really key for when you're in those slumps and you're on the verge of being distracted. So I like to imagine the average man, and I say, do I want my children to work for theirs? And immediately I'm like, absolutely fucking not. No, life is a competition. Everybody should be striving. You should always try and beat yourself yesterday. And by default, you'll beat a lot of other people. And that's just one of the many things that you can do to set your life. Because we all know what we need to do, right? You could give somebody no education and they will still know what is a good action and what is a bad action inherently. They know getting pissed, blind drunk, wasting a weekend is not a good action for an outcome of the future. Like, is the them of 5 years going to be thankful for them? The them of 5 years isn't even going to remember that weekend. But if you work that weekend, generate a bit of cash that then produces cash for the rest of your life, the you in 5 years is going to benefit from those actions. And you're still not going to remember that weekend because it's 5 years ago. And so this is why I'm really, really happy to do the work. And now I'm very, very comfortable. very comfortable. So I have a different enemy to face. Is like, do I stop? I could stop and I'd live a very, very good life. But now I force myself to feel responsible for the people who work underneath me because they need me to buy the next deal. So there's work for the construction guys, for the lettings guys, for them to grow their sort of legacies. And so you can build a never-ending circle where you force yourself to have responsibility and have stress. That you should seek stress out as a man, because what happens is it forms you and hardens you into a really competent individual. And the great thing about stress is there's no upper limit to how much you can take. Like when I went from being in the army and being very comfortable and then being the person that was responsible for everything, there was no desk that I could put that problem on. It sort of molds you into a person that is comfortable with handling problems. Where initially I was terrible at handling problems. I had so much stress that it changed my voice in certain scenarios. And just through experience of staying in it and not quitting, you become used to it. Where maybe an investor pulls £200,000 out, or an investor that you were going to raise a lot of money just pulls, and it doesn't affect you. Your heart rate doesn't go up because you're constantly under that stress. It becomes the norm. And that's a very, very good thing to happen to you. And it will if you run a business.
Yeah, Army's great for training the stress there.
And it just.
What are your thoughts on generational wealth? And it's something that I've been thinking about, wanting lots of kids. And it's like a lot of people at your level, take someone like Dan Pena, for example, who's a billionaire. I think he claims like $1 trillion, producing $1 trillion of net worth for his community or his group of people.
He's legit. Dan Pena, I've met people who have gone through his courses who are now multi-millionaires who weren't prior to meeting him.
His whole outlook with kids and generational wealth is, I'm not going to leave a penny for my kids.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
No, I'm going to try and marshal as many resources as I possibly can. So my view with children is I'm very, very thankful to my parents for staying together and giving me a soft place to land when I went and tried things. Because what happens is, if you have a stable childhood, is your capacity to take on stress and problems is a lot greater because you've got that emotional regulation. And some children will be born into households where they start at -15 through no fault of their own. So I have a lot of empathy for them. And on the flip side, anybody who has me as a dad is going to start at +15. So I feel obligated to have as many possible children as I have, adopt as many as I can, and to essentially be a benefit to society. And all of them are going to be rich because of what I'm going to teach them. Now, some of them are going to obviously have experiences through life and fall left and right and fall down, because that's what life is. But I think if you teach people the rules of money and they internalize that, giving that person then a couple million to then go enact that as opposed to starting from zero, I think
Those are massive advantages.
yeah, exactly, a massive advantage. And why wouldn't you want your descendants to have more? As long as they're not degenerates. If they're degenerates, they're going to lose it, right? But if they're not, they're going to grow it.
A part of it, I think, is them wanting their kids to experience the going from 0 to 1 on their own.
Yeah, I get that, because when you suffer, you build, like if you were to create the perfect man, especially, if you wanted him strong, you'd give him tasks and problems to solve that made him strong, like lift this, lift that. If you wanted him intelligent, you'd give him problems to solve. If you wanted him to be resourceful, you'd take his resources away from him and put him under pressure. So I get that. But then I look at the elite today, like almost all of them is nepotism. Like, do you want your children starting from zero, or do you want them to be in those circles that pull the levers?
Well, the interesting thing with a lot of leaders is that many of them don't even have kids.
Yes, exactly.
Other than, well, I guess what made you choose Thailand as one of the hubs to even be in as opposed to UK? Because you're a patriot. You've served for, you said 16 years?
13.
13 years. That's quite a while.
Yeah.
You've seen a lot. You love your country. You're proud of being British. What made you choose Thailand as one of the hubs?
Just because it's Southeast Asia and it's far from the EU. I wanted it to be completely polar opposite to where the EU was, essentially.
Mhm.
Because I've already got Britain. I was thinking of the Middle East, but it's too volatile, more so than anywhere else. And then I I'd think about South America as well at some point in the future. So I think having 3 to 4 places where if it all went pop, like, because even in the UK, like, look what they did to Russians, all the Russian businesses, because of actions that, like, they're not Putin. Like, they didn't invade Ukraine, yet they got all their wealth taken from them like that because they were connected to the regime. So England could do it to me if I had the wrong opinion or the wrong government was in power. So it's always good to have, I think, a backup, like a fail-safe.
Diversifying, not putting all your eggs into one basket.
Yeah, exactly. But England is the UK is like the Titanic that's hit the iceberg. There's only really one way to solve the issues. It's either win or lose. There's no sort of like middle ground here in terms of like the demographic change. So I'm kind of, prior to our organization, I was kind of like, right, I need to get rich, get in the countryside and have lots of children. And then when everything descends into chaos, there'll be a little area that still has stability. And now we've sort of got our strong man. He's finally arisen, and that's Rupert Lowe. So I'm a lot more optimistic than I've been in a long time. And so instead of like hoarding and trying to scurry off into the hills, I'm more about putting my shoulder to the wheel and helping him get in.
This is which guy?
Rupert Lowe.
Rupert Lowe.
It's the same in any Western country. Like, every time there's a vote that even gives a hint that it will stop the mass immigration, demographic change of those countries, people vote for it in force. And then when they get in power, it's never it's the reality of what they actually do is never what they say to get in. Where he, from the very beginning, when you go back into his past, he works so flipping hard, and he's been so consistent from the beginning, like and he's like, I'm going to deport millions of them. I'm going to deport millions of them. And he gets a lot of flack for that, and he's just unashamed. And that's what's needed, though, because Britain won't be Britain. West won't be the West without those strong men.
We have none of those people.
You have zero in Canada. Zero.
I really don't know how we got here. I think Canadians deserve every little bit of problem that we have. I think Canadians, if we take them in bulk, are way more spineless than the Americans or the Brits. And I'm generally surprised that there hasn't been a single person. I think there has been a few rallies of people asking for deportation, but it's been very quickly quelled and suppressed. I think the vast majority of Canadians want exactly what they're receiving, and it became even more apparent to me when we once again, after I think 8 years of Liberal government and the mess that we've had, 10 years of the government since 2015 of Trudeau getting into office. What did we do again last year? We voted Liberals in again because elbows up, we're Canadian. We don't want American influence because Trump said a few things. Let's vote Liberals again because Liberals have the strongest policies against America. And they wanted for it. They voted for it, and we're going to go down very, very quickly.
Yeah, it's every country in the West is the same. Like, white people are the only people that are not allowed to say, I want to live with white people. But everyone else in the world can say, I want to live with white people. It seems really odd. And that's why the countries are being so demographically changed.
Outside of property, what do you typically enjoy as a hobby? Do you do any kind of boxing? Do you do any kind of sports? What's your go-to to decompress?
I'm really, really fortunate that the thing that I like to do is completely free, and it's just go walking in the countryside. There's nothing that gives me more contentment than just walking up a hill with my dog, sitting there having a nice cup of tea, and then walking back down.
Yeah, and on your Instagram, you have quite a few shots. Like, you enjoy photography, you enjoy capturing kind of the view, hiking, the mountains. I love that as well.
Yeah, there's no downside to it. You get fit, you get healthy, you get to see the countryside, you get to see the views as well. And I think a lot of the depression and anxiety that people have is because they're very disconnected from nature. If you're very, very, very close to nature and outside, it's very hard to be depressed. It's very hard because everything's just so bloody stunning. You have moments of appreciation. Like, you can look out of view and be like, yeah, this is good. This is great.
And I'm starting to feel that as well. Like, I did 4 years in the Army, and I got to capture and take in a lot of the Canadian beauty the national duty that we had,
My goodness.
through all the different exercises that we did in East Coast Canada to Ontario to out in Edmonton in minus 20, minus 30 with the blizzards. And so I've had plenty of spicy camping.
I've
But
been to
now-
Calgary as well. It's
Oh, nice.
a med hat.
But now it's starting with my work with the startups and tech, being in front of the computer all day and on this, and even running Breaking Cigars, all the social media stuff, like it's the brain rot starting to get to me. Like I'm starting to get annoyed. I'm like, man, I live digitally,
Correct.
and it's generally starting to get to me. And I'm like, man, I want to be more so in the world.
Yeah, because you can't like, although I earlier on said you've got to work, you can still enjoy the process by just going for a walk.
Yeah.
Like, walking has had so much profound benefits for people who were struggling with addiction, people who were struggling with their family life. It's so beneficial. It literally changes the way that your your physicality, like just going for a walk. Everybody can walk, right? Even fat people, even really obese, they can walk. And if you walk, you're going to burn more calories, you're going to eat less. And the benefits just compound, just very similar to having a good relationship with money. Like, you only get one body, right? So you might as well look after it. And walking is one of the best things that you can do. It's low impact. You're very unlikely to get injured. You get a great view. The people who also go out walking are flipping fabulous people as well. Not like the degenerates in most of the cities. It's just, I can't laud it enough. I bloody love it.
Do you have a few extra minutes for a quick rapid fire round of questions?
I do, yeah. Go for it.
Oh, yeah. Let's see what I have prepped. Question number 1.
Go for it.
What's the best deal you ever did?
Best deal I ever did. And it has to be the farm. I'll tell you the story of it. I have wanted to have a farm for a long time because I want to have field to plate supply lines when the country inevitably collapses. So I drew a circle around my city, knocked on every farm door, said, if you want to sell, here's my card. Want to sell, here's my card. The circle got bigger and bigger and bigger till I was about an hour away. Knocked on this door, and the farmhouse was in the middle of the land, so I had to go on the land. So they were like, what are you doing here? Get off. Very, very hostile initial reaction. Gave them my card. Now, what happened about it was very quick, 6 to 12 weeks later, the wife called of the family and said, we're interested in selling. Now, what had happened, a terrible accident. The husband who was running the farm had slipped and fell in his wife's secretary, and she caught them. And so now she was very, very motivated to sell the farm because the family was breaking down, because he couldn't keep it in his pants or be fully honest with his wife. So she sold it for £1 above the mortgage just to spite him. So he put the farm in her name as a sort of capital tax play, because if you own it personally, do it up and then sell it, you don't pay capital gains tax. So he had a house in his name and he put it in this house in his wife's name. But then she sold it from underneath him and he couldn't do anything. So the farm was bought for 1.8 million in 2019, and I bought it for 2021, I bought it for £1,040,000. And what they had done, they'd got planning within the countryside as well to expand this farmhouse. So it's still ongoing at the minute. So what I did is it's purchased it for £1,040,000. We're probably going to spend about 2 million all in all, and it's going to be worth 7. But in its current form, it's a holiday park with a couple of units and a couple of industrial estates. So that's the best deal, essentially, but we're living through it at the moment. And it was basically bought at 50%, near on 50% of what it was purchased for 2 years prior, because of infidelity of the farmer, like shagging his wife's secretary. So a very good deal.
How often do you find that, like, these purchases, and there can be commonality with mergers and acquisitions where businesses sell, so it's not just properties, but business, and a lot of things are up for sale. Because of the situation, because of a sequence of events, people decide to sell. Similar to this scenario here, where for them, it's a very unique situation. Do you come across those unique situations
All the time. So There's been scenarios where this is why your reputation is important. It's more valuable than the money that you have in your account, because if you've got a good reputation, people will come to you. So the most recent purchase that we made is Middleton Hall Road. Now that was completely off market, but a vendor went to somebody who runs an estate agent and said, I want to do this off market. They looked at the property and they said, I know exactly who I'm going to give this to. And it's because I'm very clear with what I want. Now, the person that brought me the deal didn't know how much to charge me for it, but I told him the price. Now he was thinking, right, I'll get 5-6 grand for this. And I said, no, you've got something good here. I'm going to give you 16 grand, which was 40. I gave him 2% of 791. So it was about 15 grand. Now that stories like that, I'm very, very loud about, and I promote in my city. So people will bring me deals that they have, not knowing the value of that deal. And I'm able to unlock the value, because with a property, it might just be an okay deal, but because of all these different tools that I've learned, you can turn it into a fantastic deal. So I'll give you an example. Middleton Hall Road, 791. It's 7 flats and 1 house, but the rents haven't been put up for bloody years. So you can put up the rents, and now instead of it earning, say, 5 grand, it's now earning 8 grand. And when you've got a group of properties together, you can get a valuation on a yield basis. So let me explain what a yield is. Let's say you've got a £100,000 house, and it earns £6,000 a year. So that's got a 6% yield, because a £100,000 value is earning 6%. Now let's say the bank is happy with that £6,000. You put the rent up, it's now earning £10,000. So it's gone up. Let's make it nice and easy. It's now earning £12,000. So value £12,000 at a 6% yield is now an extra £100,000. So that house is now worth £200,000.
Interesting.
So that's a commercial value. You haven't done anything but put the rent up. You've done no work to it. You've just put the rents up in line with market.
And that increases the valuation of the house. Ooh.
So let's say it's very rare that you're going to get double the rent. That's just not. It's usually like maybe 20-30% more.
Yep.
Now, you then, instead of renting their flats out individually, you maybe Airbnb some of them. You maybe then get planning permission to extend and add rooms. Maybe you get planning permission to add flats. Then you've got the construction company that builds them out at cost. You've got the lettings company that lets them out at cost. So you've got all these little couple of percent points that turn an okay deal into a fantastic deal, because you've got the conception to delivery of the pipeline. So this is what I like to do with properties. And I will show anybody who brings me a deal what I'm going to do, how I'm going to extract the value, and then I'll pay them for it. So it's very beneficial for me to do those deals, for the individuals to bring me those deals, because they're going to get paid well, they're going to learn more, and they'll probably try and do the next one themselves. And if it falls through, they'll bring it to me. So consistently, it's people now. I haven't seen that deal. I haven't been inside. It got brought to me over online. We had a cigar to celebrate when we completed, and it's an extra £400,000 on the balance sheet. And it's now currently going through the process of being expanded. So I don't do marketing anymore. The deals come to me because of the work that's been put in over decades of consistently following through and making sure that your word is law.
Reputation.
Yeah, it's so
Your
important.
reputation precedes you. That's super powerful. What's the worst deal you've ever had?
Oh, God. So my Hong Kong partner, we did this thing called HMO, or a house of multiple occupancy, where we would buy a house, split it into 6 units, thank you, and refinance, and we'd leave a bit of money in. And we did it again and again and again. And we did it 3 times. And typically, planning permission is very difficult to get, but for some reason, ours just sailed through. And this is like young naivety, young ego. So we bought one for, say, 300. We'd spend 80K on it. It'd be valued at like 450. We'd get 75% loan against that. So we'd pull a lot of it out, leave like 20-30K in. So we did 3 of these. And we had this moment, like, I think we're about to bloody solve the housing crisis. We're bloody good at this. Right, they're fully let, they're earning money. Let's do 3 at the same time, but borrow money from the bank. So we were doing them cash prior to this. So we did 3 at the same time, Park Road, Edgbaston Road East, and King's Heath. Put the planning apps in for all of them. Went on a hard money loan, which is the equivalent in Canada, or a bridge, and all 3 came back rejected. and we were on these hard money loans. So it wasn't one deal, it was 3 deals. And what happened then, that company limped on for like 5 years trying to get out of these deals. It's too long of a story to explain here now, but the ego got away from us and we had to basically just manage the decline and get out of those deals without losing too much money. We sold them, then had to build them out for another investor. So yeah, it was 3 deals at once.
And what was kind of the thing that made it all collapse?
We got greedy. Instead of going for 8 units, we went for 16, went to 30, went for 11 on all 3. And the council were just like, nope. So we couldn't build out.
Very interesting. What's the worst advice you've ever been given on property?
Follow your dream. Yeah, what a crock of shit that is. You need to follow, like, you need to learn how money works, learn how the system works, so you and your descendants are not slaves to it. Like, learn how money works. That's the biggest key thing that every man needs to do. And you'll never exchange your time for minimum wage ever again. Because you don't get rich from a job. You get rich from investing and using inflation to your advantage.
What's the best thing the Army gave you that money can't buy?
Oh, that's good. I would say the realization that you can change your personality just through repetition. Like, you become virtuous by doing virtuous things. You become hedonistic by doing hedonistic things. Now, you've all met an old person who's fucking fabulous to talk to, who's got so many stories, whose just energy is so like nourishing and fulfilling. And you've equally met an old person who's miserable, who sucks the energy, who's very difficult to be around. Now, you will be 1 or 2 of those people. You won't be in the middle. There's an upward spiral and there's a downward spiral. And the daily actions will determine what type of life and what type of person that you are. And that all stemmed from the lessons of like integrity, like self-reliance.
Yeah, and there's a lot that I realized with the Army training. Army training reprograms people quite well because it assumes that you start at 0. And so it teaches you to... I remember I loved this 80s, I think it was either 80s or 90s documentary in the Royal Marines. And it was walking through basic training and what they go through with officer selection. It went all the way from selection to like them graduating. And at the very start, they teach you how to wash your own ass.
Yes,
I found
they
it
do.
very
And
impressive.
shave and all sorts, yeah. Brush your teeth.
And people can be very much trained, and people have different capabilities, but Army does a very good job of friction welding people together and just reprogramming them.
Yeah.
Biggest regret in business?
Your biggest regret in business? Saying yes to too many things. There's a lot of power in saying no.
If you could go back, Chinese or Arabic?
Oh, still Chinese, yeah. Absolutely.
Do you find that it brings you value still to know Chinese?
Yes. I buy a lot of kitchen supplies and bathrooms from China. It's very, very useful.
Property education courses, worth it or predatory?
You're only ever going to like fundamentally learn it by going out there and doing it. You can get all the education that you need from networking and just taking it slow. So I did the property education. I've spent a lot of money on it and there were some good educators. And most of the property education that I've done is that it like got me to a point where I'm like, yeah, that's not for me. And that's what I've learned. But the vast majority of them are predatory. Like for me, like why would you teach your own competition? So what I found is most of the property educators were making their money from education and not property. Now, when you are good at property, it's much harder in property and much slower. But once you've got that engine going, it never stops. It never stops and it'll go on in perpetuity. But it's just a lot harder and it's a lot slower. But those people need to like buy the next deal, be the next flashy person, need to sell that lifestyle. And I've not met many educators apart from the people who have massive portfolios and do education on the side that I would want their business.
If you had to start from 0 and you're back to being 26 again, would you still select real estate or would you go some other path?
I'd still select real estate because once it's set up, it's very easy to maintain. The growth is the hard bit. Now, there's so much money coming my way from people who have fabulously successful service-based businesses, like disgustingly successful. But because they're on the treadmill every day,
Right.
they're on the tread. They never take. I've been in this country for what we're now in March, right? Since November, I bought 2 deals, and my portfolio is still ticking along. It might not be running at 100%, but the people that I have running it now are doing a really good job. That it's still running to a point where it's still successful. There aren't that many businesses where you can do that, and it's run by one person.
If you had to choose a country for real estate, would you still choose Britain or would you choose US or some other
Well,
country?
the US has this fabulous thing called a 1033 exchange. Now, I look at that with longingly over the ocean because you can invest in a bigger deal and pay no tax and you can flip. So I think if I went to the US, I'd be a lot richer. Yeah. But I just love the UK. I love Britain too much. North Wales has my heart.
Do you have to be a citizen for that
No.
to participate in the 1033?
Oh, I'm not too sure. I thought you meant to invest in the UK. I'm not too sure. But America's so big. I'd probably get analysis paralysis. I'm quite a big fish in a small pond, and I quite like that. And it's going to mean I'm going to be fairly successful regardless.
Final question for you.
Go for it.
If you were to leave the world tomorrow, if Dan Kennedy was to leave the world tomorrow, God forbid, what would be your last message to the 26-year-olds out there?
Fucking have more children. Yeah, have children, man. Oh, my God, if I died tomorrow, that'd be awful. But everything pales in comparison, right? Now, what's the point in all of this if you don't have a legacy? What is the absolute point? To indulge and just have a great life experience and then you be the end of your bloodline after all those people before you suffered? That's your legacy? Fuck no. I do not fathom why people have more urgency to have children.
Is there a good age to start?
I'm not speaking from experience, so I can't really divulge. But the people that do have them, who are competent, they don't have regrets. That's for sure. And it'll give you a reason to get up, right? If you're this driven, when you're only looking after yourself, imagine how driven you're going to be if you've got a family to look after. If you built that type of personality where you feel responsible.
No, just imagine like having a kid. Oh my God. I think a lot of things would keep me up at night.
Yeah, well,
I wouldn't be able to go to sleep as much.
Like we all think we're going to be at 80, die at 80, we're surrounded by our loved ones with a really fulfilled life. But like tomorrow isn't promised.
100%.
We could be gone. Like do with that information what you will, but time is finite and it's going to go quicker than you think. Like, I do wish. Yeah, not wish because I'm already there, but there's probably certain points where I could have had children earlier for sure. But it's going to be a good life anyway.
Yeah, I've had a few people my age and younger pass away recently that I knew, and I'm like, wow, like that person was perfectly healthy. They were supposed to live a long life, but just one day, just gone. And I would fucking hate dying without having at least one son out there to carry on my legacy.
Well, you never really die if you have children, do you? Because they live on for you.
You just replicate.
Yeah,
You just copied yourself. So, 1,000% I haven't gotten that response yet from anyone, and I think it's a very valuable statement. Have more kids, replicate yourself, because then if not, what is it all for?
Exactly. Well, everyone has their own set of motivations, and for me, when I go back 2-3 generations, or even at like 10-15, where our sort of ancestors will boil down to one person, who could be Genghis Khan. They all suffered immeasurable amounts. Like our life is nowhere near as difficult as even 2-3 generations ago, and so why waste the gift that we've got? Like every day is a gift, and if you treat it like that, you'll feel more happy because you're feeling the presence of the gift that you've got, as opposed to just floating through life. You never want to be a floater or a drifter, as it says, and a lot of people are. They're not deliberate about their actions or their days. They're not deliberate about what they're going to achieve. They don't end the day with like, what can I take from today that will make me a better person for tomorrow? And like those little wins compound, and you can live a really fantastic, experienced, rich life. And you can look after people as well if you decide to be that person. Like there would have been, there's a thought that I like to dwell on when I have quiet moments. Like there would have been, at some point, an ancestor of yours stood on a battlefield next to a brother, next to somebody who died on that battlefield that has no living descendants today, and you're here. So you would have had hundreds of people, thousands of people that would have had life-shattering experiences that they still managed to get a child out for the next die. They still managed to get a child out, and there would have been many people that didn't get to carry on their bloodline. And not, like, what are you going to do with that gift? Are you going to sit and moan and say it's hard? Or are you going to go out there, dictate your circumstances, create a dent in the world, and then be that one person that everyone after you goes, that's the reason why we're doing better than most people now. Because the ladder is being pulled up, man. What happened post-World War II, where there was a massive middle class boom, is not the norm. The norm is a very few rich and loads of poor people at the bottom, and we're heading straight back down there.
I love that visualization. Do you do any kind of consulting around real estate? Where can people find you?
No, not anymore. Unfortunately, I've created my own competition, so I've stopped doing it. I've like gone to deals and like seen students there and been like, mother chuck, you're actually following through with the lessons. So for me, I don't do teaching anymore now. I'm purely focused on expanding the real estate. I've got more money than I can spend and put into deals because of the people that want in on this. So now it's just execute and scale for me.
If people wanted to connect with you or follow you, where can they find you?
I'm not really a public, but like don't essentially. Yeah, I don't want people to contact me. I want people to figure. Yeah. My tenants don't know that they rent from me. The only people I did deal with are the builders day to day. I want to sort of not be that.
You want peace?
Not peace. Just because I've got everything that I could possibly need. So anything else to add to that is just not necessary.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I know that's a bit odd in terms of the personal branding and how you're meant to put yourself out there, but the biggest favor you can do for me, if you see me, is just look the other way, and I'll thank you silently.
I love it. Dan, thank you so much.
Cheers, thanks for having me. That was a good chat.